Welcome to the story of an intense chase, where life and death hang in the balance, and betrayal cuts deeper than the pain of a bullet wound. This isn't just any ordinary pursuit, it's a battle for survival, a fight against time, and a moment that will leave you on the edge of your seat. In the thick haze of a city at war, Arya and his partner Jaka are caught in the middle of a deadly game. Betrayed by their own, hunted by those they once trusted, they now find themselves with nowhere to run. But in the midst of chaos there's a glimmer of hope, a chance to escape. Will they make it out alive? Buckle up, because what follows is a high-speed chase, a race against the clock, and a story that will keep you guessing until the very end. Let's dive into the heart of this story. If you're hooked already, don't forget to leave a comment below. What do you think Arya and Jaka will do next? Can they escape the danger closing in? Share your thoughts and let's get the conversation started. Rain poured heavily over the skies of Jakarta that night. The toll road was quiet, with only a few heavy trucks moving slowly, swallowed by the early morning silence. Streetlights glowed dimly, casting blurry shadows across the windshield of the patrol car from South Jakarta Police. Inside the vehicle, Second Inspector Arya sat behind the wheel. He was young, just 3 years into service. Beside him was Officer Jaka, his calm yet alert partner. They were on a routine patrol, keeping an eye on the toll road, recently known as a favored escape route for fleeing criminals. Arya, there was a report earlier about a black sedan fleeing a checkpoint near Mangan Gate, Jaka said while scanning the traffic cam feed on the monitor. Before Arya could respond, a voice from the radio broke through in panic. Black sedan B1823 GFO speeding toward Kawang. Patrol units respond immediately. Arya instantly veered into the fast lane. The siren screamed. The red and blue strobes flashed furiously, reflecting off the wet toll walls. Within seconds they spotted it. A black sedan streaking ahead, far beyond legal speed. Arya slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The chase had begun. But it wasn't just the speed that shocked them, it was the way the car moved. The sedan weaved erratically, nearly scraping the barriers, slicing between heavy vehicles with reckless precision. This wasn't a normal driver. This guy isn't just reckless, Arya. He's either desperate, or trained, Jaka muttered as he activated the dashboard camera to capture everything. The patrol car inched closer. Rainfall intensified, reducing visibility. Every second stretched, hanging between survival and disaster. Jaka squinted at the license plate, matching it against the earlier report. A strange suspicion grew in the pit of his stomach. There was something more behind this pursuit. Suddenly, the black sedan swerved sharply into the left lane without signaling. It darted between large trucks at a speed that defied logic. Arya nearly lost control as he followed through the gaps left by panicked drivers. The radio crackled with news of backup en route, but Arya knew one thing. If they hesitated even for a second, the suspect would vanish. Arya gripped the wheel tight. His eyes locked forward. Jaka held his breath beside him. They didn't know where the sedan was really headed. But one thing was certain. This chase was far from ordinary. The rain showed no sign of stopping, pounding the asphalt like a war drum. Wipers swung violently, barely keeping up with the downpour. Arya tightened his grip on the wheel as the black sedan ahead zigzagged past a convoy of freight haulers. One wrong move and everything could end in an instant. "Get me the vehicle registry," Arya ordered. Jaka tapped on the onboard tablet. The data loaded slowly under the poor signal. Finally, a name popped up on the screen. Arya's eyes widened. "Registered to Damar Iskandar," Jaka read aloud, then paused. "Wait, Damar? Isn't he dead?" Arya cut in coldly. "Supposedly died in a shootout 2 years ago." Their silence was louder than the sirens. Jaka's hands trembled slightly. Damar Iskandar was no ordinary criminal. He was a former elite driver, military-trained, turned syndicate member. Drug trafficking, arms smuggling and attempted murder charges all linked back to him. But 2 years ago, a burning car wreck supposedly ended his trail. The case was closed. No body ever confirmed. Now he was back. And he was driving like a man possessed. "He's baiting us," Arya murmured. "He knows this road, this pattern. He's toying with us." Suddenly the sedan slammed on its brakes. A wild swerve sent the car spinning sideways, drifting across 3 lanes in perfect control before jetting onto the off-ramp near Halim. Arya reacted instantly, forcing their patrol car to cut across traffic. They raced down the ramp, tires screeching. Ahead, Damar's car burst through a tollgate barrier, scattering debris across the wet pavement. Jaka's eyes narrowed. "He wants us to follow. This isn't just escape. It's personal." The city lights grew denser as they entered the industrial zone. Warehouses loomed on both sides, casting long shadows under flickering street lamps. The sedan's taillights shimmered like a phantom, always just out of reach. Then it vanished, right at a sharp bend. No screech, no trace. Arya slowed, eyes scanning every corner. That road led nowhere. Just a blocked construction site. Or so it should have. In the darkness, something caught Jaka's eye, a gap in the wire fence just wide enough for a car. He built his own route, Jaka whispered. And now they had entered his trap. The police cruiser nosed its way through the narrow gap in the wire fence. Rain dripped from broken strands of metal as the car's headlights illuminated a labyrinth of stacked shipping containers. The massive steel boxes, red and blue and rusted, towered like forgotten tombstones in the industrial wasteland. Arya eased off the gas. Keep your eyes peeled. This is no longer pursuit territory. We're in his domain now. The radio crackled but offered no signal. Concrete walls and cargo crates muffled everything. The city, only a few hundred meters away, felt like another world. Jaka checked his pistol, his breathing heavy. What's his plan? To isolate. To corner. Maybe to finish what he started 2 years ago, Arya replied, his voice calm but laced with memory. I testified against him. I pulled the trigger that ended his reign. Or so I thought. Suddenly, the sound of screeching tires echoed behind them. Arya spun the wheel. Too late. A blinding set of headlights struck their rearview mirror. Damar's black sedan emerged from the shadows like a ghost, engine roaring like a beast unchained. He hadn't vanished. He had circled them. Hunted them. The impact came hard. Metal crunched. Their cruiser jolted forward. Jaka slammed his hand against the dash, then reached for the emergency light switch. The beacon on their roof spun weakly, reflecting off the wet steel around them. Out. Arya shouted. They flung open their doors just as Damar's sedan charged again, ramming the patrol car a second time and sending it into a stack of oil drums. Fire burst in orange streaks before dying under the rain. Arya and Jaka ducked behind a container. The engine noise ceased. Silence fell. Then slow footsteps. One pair. Boots on wet concrete. Come out, Arya, a voice echoed through the maze. I owe you something. Jaka's eyes widened. He's unarmed. Right? No, Arya said. He never is. Arya's hand gripped his sidearm, pulse steady. His breath formed mist in the air. One step at a time they moved deeper into the container maze. Shadows danced under flickering lights. Every corner could be an ambush. Every second a trigger. And Damar, the ghost in the machine, was watching. The seconds stretched out like hours, every breath too loud, every footstep too slow. Arya and Jaka crept through the darkness, eyes darting from one shadow to the next. The scent of oil and rust hung thick in the air, mingling with the damp chill of the night. The sound of Damar's boots clicking against the concrete was faint, but unmistakable. He was toying with them, letting them feel the tension. He knew this place, every nook, every cranny, and it was his advantage. I'll cover you, Jaka whispered, his hand tightening around his weapon. His eyes were sharp, but his posture betrayed the tension simmering just beneath his calm exterior. Arya nodded. On my mark. They moved in unison, weaving between the containers, their bodies pressed close to the walls, their footsteps muffled by the slick ground. Arya's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the anticipation of the showdown that was inevitably coming. Suddenly, a faint click echoed through the maze, and the faintest trace of movement caught Arya's eye. A shadow, no, two shadows, shifted behind a stack of crates. They weren't alone anymore. Damar wasn't just lurking. He had someone with him. Get ready, Arya murmured, his eyes narrowing. Damar's voice rang out, smooth and chilling, as if he had been waiting for this moment for years. You thought you could end me, Arya. But you were wrong. The shadows shifted again, and Arya's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know who Damar had with him, but it didn't matter. The real fight was about to begin. Damar's footsteps drew closer, but Arya could sense the hesitation in his movements. Damar was no longer the predator he once was. The confrontation had shifted. Damar had become desperate, cornered, and desperate men were dangerous, unpredictable. A gunshot rang out. Jaka's eyes widened as a bullet grazed his shoulder. He stumbled back, his hand pressing against the wound, but he didn't fall. Instead, he kept moving closer to Arya. Stay low. Arya shouted, pulling Jaka behind a container. Blood dripped from Jaka's shoulder, but there was no time to tend to it. Arya's focus was sharp, every fiber of his being fixed on the danger that loomed just beyond the darkness. The voice came again. You think I'm done? Damar taunted, his laughter echoing off the walls. I'm just getting started. Another shot rang out. Arya flinched as it clipped the corner of the container. The metal screeched in protest as the bullet ricocheted. In a split second, Arya knew it was now or never. With a sharp motion, Arya rolled out from behind the container, firing his weapon. The muzzle flash illuminated the darkness as he took aim. He didn't have much time. He had to end this now. But then something unexpected happened. The world seemed to freeze for a moment. A second figure emerged from the shadows, this one larger, imposing. And Arya recognized the silhouette immediately. It was Damar, but it wasn't Damar alone anymore. His ally was someone from Arya's past. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Not him. Arya muttered under his breath. The figure that emerged from the shadows was unmistakable. Arya's breath caught in his throat as his eyes locked onto the familiar face. His old comrade Farhan. The man who had once stood beside him in the trenches, fighting for the same cause, now stood with Damar, his gun aimed at Arya. Farhan. Arya's voice trembled, a mix of disbelief and anger. Farhan's lips curled into a smirk, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Only cold, calculated resolve. Did you really think I'd stay loyal to a cause that was destined to fall? Damar promised me power, Arya. Power that you could never give me. Arya's mind raced. Farhan had always been ambitious, but this betrayal, this was beyond anything he could have imagined. You've sold your soul, Farhan, Arya hissed. This is madness. Farhan's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a look of regret. But it was fleeting, gone as quickly as it had come. The world doesn't care about your ideals, Arya. It only cares about who's in control. Damar stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. Enough talk. It's time to end this. Arya's grip on his weapon tightened. He wasn't just facing Damar anymore. He was up against Farhan, someone who knew his every move, every strategy. The thought of fighting someone he had once called a brother only added fuel to the fire burning in his chest. Jaka, though injured, was still by Arya's side, his hand gripping his sidearm. We've got this, boss, Jaka said, his voice steady despite the pain. But Arya knew this wouldn't be easy. Farhan knew him too well. Farhan had once been his closest ally, his most trusted friend. Now that very trust was shattered and Arya had to make a choice. He could either fight to survive, or he could make a desperate play for redemption. Either way, he knew there was no turning back. Without warning, Farhan fired. The bullet flew past Arya's ear, and the sound of it whizzing through the air was enough to snap Arya into action. He ducked instinctively, rolling behind cover. Move! Arya shouted, pulling Jaka along with him as they sprinted through the maze of containers. Farhan and Damar pursued them, their footsteps echoing, but Arya could hear the uncertainty in their pursuit. They were hunting, but they weren't sure where the next strike would come from. Arya's mind raced as he calculated their next move. This wasn't just about escaping. This was about taking back control, about making sure Farhan couldn't destroy everything they had fought for. Jaka, get ready, Arya whispered as they ducked behind another container. We make our stand here. Jaka nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. He was ready. But as the two men prepared for what would be their final stand, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that the battle wasn't just against Damar and Farhan. There was something deeper at play, something that had been building for years, something that neither he nor Jaka had seen coming. The air was thick with tension as Arya and Jaka crouched behind the containers, their breaths shallow, waiting for the right moment. Farhan and Damar's footsteps grew louder, closer. It was a cat-and-mouse game, but Arya knew that if he didn't act soon, they would be the ones trapped. Jaka's voice was barely a whisper, but it was full of resolve. Boss, we're running out of time. What's the plan? Arya's mind raced as he tried to piece everything together. They couldn't just wait for an opportunity to come to them. They had to create it. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. We move fast, Jaka. We take them by surprise. Jaka nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. They both knew that this wasn't going to be easy. Farhan had the upper hand, but Arya was no stranger to high-stakes situations. He had fought in worse conditions, but this betrayal cut deeper than any battle he had ever faced. The sound of footsteps stopped and Arya held his breath. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the unmistakable click of a weapon being cocked echoed through the air. Arya didn't hesitate. He signaled to Jaka, and they both leaped into action. They sprinted from their hiding spot, their weapons drawn, aiming for Farhan and Damar. Farhan's face was a mask of surprise, but he quickly recovered, raising his gun. The first shot rang out, but Arya was already diving for cover. The bullet grazed his arm, but he didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to. This was it, the moment where everything either fell apart or came together. "Get down?" Jaka yelled, pulling Arya behind a large metal container. The sound of gunfire filled the air, and Arya could feel his heart pounding in his chest. They were surrounded, but they couldn't stop now. "Farhan!" Arya called out, his voice loud enough to cut through the chaos. "This doesn't have to end like this. You can still turn back." But Farhan's response was a cold laugh. "It's too late for that, Arya. You should have known better than to trust me." The gunfight intensified. Arya and Jaka fought with everything they had, using their surroundings to their advantage, but Damar and Farhan were relentless. The world around them was a blur of flashing lights and the deafening sound of gunfire. Time seemed to slow as Arya's mind sharpened, every movement calculated, every decision crucial. Then, in the chaos of the firefight, something unexpected happened. A loud explosion rang out, shaking the ground beneath them. Arya's ears rang from the blast, and for a moment, everything went dark. When his vision cleared, he saw Jaka on the ground, blood staining the dirt beneath him. Farhan and Damar had disappeared into the smoke, but the damage was done. "No!" Arya shouted, rushing to Jaka's side. His friend, his comrade, lay there, struggling to breathe, his face pale. "Jaka, stay with me." Jaka's eyes flickered open, and despite the pain, he managed a weak smile. We can still finish this, boss," he whispered. Arya's heart shattered. Jaka had always been there for him, and now, as his friend lay on the brink of death, Arya knew the cost of this battle. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about something much more personal. As he held Jaka in his arms, Arya's resolve hardened. The fight wasn't over. Farhan and Damar might have thought they had won, but they had no idea what they had awakened. The sound of Jaka's labored breathing was the only thing Arya could hear now. His heart raced, panic threatening to take over, but he fought it down. His mind was set on one thing: surviving this and ensuring that Jaka didn't die in vain. He adjusted Jaka's head, making sure his friend's breathing remained steady despite the bleeding. His body ached with exhaustion, and the pain in his arm was becoming unbearable, but Arya pushed it all aside. There was no time for weakness. Farhan and Damar were still out there, and they had to be stopped. The explosion had left a thick haze of smoke that blurred everything around them. Arya could barely make out shapes through the fog, but he knew it wouldn't be long before Farhan and Damar regrouped. The air was heavy, thick with the stench of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood. Time was running out. "Jaka, you need to hang on," Arya whispered, his voice raw. His hands trembled as he pressed a cloth to Jaka's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. The intensity of the moment was suffocating. Arya could feel the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. But even in the face of all this, something inside him clicked. He wasn't just going to let this end like this. They had come too far, fought too hard. Farhan and Damar had betrayed them, but Arya wasn't going to let them walk away from this. A distant sound, barely audible over the chaos, caught his attention: footsteps. Arya's heart skipped a beat. They were getting closer. He couldn't risk them finding him here, with Jaka helpless and the situation growing worse by the second. Arya quickly scanned the area, his mind calculating every option. There was a narrow alley just beyond the containers. It would be dangerous to move, but it was their best chance of escaping. He couldn't carry Jaka alone, not with his injury, but he could drag him. Arya clenched his teeth, gritting through the pain in his arm, and slowly began pulling Jaka toward the alley. Each movement was a battle against time, but there was no choice. "Stay with me, Jaka," he murmured again, his voice filled with determination. "I won't leave you behind." As he reached the alley, Arya ducked into the shadows, his breath coming in short bursts. The fog was thick, but it offered some cover. He paused for a moment, trying to listen for any sign of movement. There was nothing, no sound, no sign of Farhan or Damar. He couldn't afford to relax, not yet. His mind raced, his thoughts wild as he formulated his next move. He had to end this. He had to bring Farhan and Damar to justice, and he wouldn't let anyone stand in his way. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead. Arya's heart lurched as he pulled Jaka closer, trying to stay hidden. The footsteps were louder now, unmistakable. Farhan and Damar were close. With a final glance at Jaka, Arya steeled himself. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. The moment of truth.